Mary Pat's joining. All right. So I do think we have a little bit of, maybe that, does that sound better? Okay, I'm not sure where that's coming from.
Yeah, I'm not hearing an echo or anything.
Okay.
I've got a pretty bad echo.
I do too.
Are others hearing that?
I do as well.
So I guess if it's not speaking, just mute yourself. That'll help.
Yeah, I think we've got someone who's got their speaker on. So go ahead. I'm going to watch. Yeah, as soon as we mute everyone, we should be good. Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Elizabeth Spalding. I am with JUB Engineers, and my role here today is to help facilitate our public scoping meeting. So welcome. Hopefully you're here for the Truckee River Watershed Plan Environmental Documentation Public Scoping meeting. We have about an hour today. What I'm going to do is quickly review how we are going to use our platform today, let you know where we're headed, and then we're going to move straight into introductions and a project presentation. So for those of you who have just joined, feel free to name yourself if you'd like so that you can identify yourself for those who are also on the meeting. You can do that by hovering your mouse over the space, your own Hollywood square, and you can click on those three dots at the top. Click on that, a drop-down menu should say rename. You can type in your first and or last name, and if you'd like, you can also type in the organization that you're representing. Today, because we are anticipating a fairly large crowd, and we do know that there will be a number of questions and comments, please feel free to submit all of your questions through that chat function. So Allison Adams, who is also listed as a facilitator, she and I will be your co-hosts. You can send your questions to Allison. She will help you. And what we're going to do is read through your questions, categorize them, and send them back out so that those questions that are similar, we can kind of lump them in and move through the questions more quickly today. A quick reminder, this is being recorded. So all of our comments and questions will be captured. This recording will be posted on our website. We'll direct you to that website at the end of this meeting. But if you have anyone in your life who might want to watch this, or if you want to re-watch this, feel free to direct them to that website and they can watch this meeting. We'll also make sure that we have the displays that we use today and those project photos on that website as well so that you can learn a little bit more about that project. The last thing I'll mention, just because we did have a few additional people join us, please do keep yourself mute. Allison and I will help by muting you if you unmute yourself. That's just going to reduce that background noise so that you can better hear the presenters. And we will read those questions so we don't have to worry about you coming off of mute. Just submit those again to Allison via the chat. And for those who are somewhat new to chat, you can hover your mouse at the bottom of the screen. There's a chat icon. Click on that. You can select Allison, submit your question, and we're just going to move through those questions as we get them at the end of our presentation. So before we get started, I want to introduce you to the project team that will be working on this project. And there's a whole spectrum of folks from our NRCS lead to our project sponsors to the JUB team that will be implementing a lot of this work. So I'm going to go ahead and start with our NRCS lead, Mike Callahan. Mike, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know what your role will be on this project.
Hello, everyone. So I work for the federal government for the Natural Resources Conservation Service. I am the Nevada State Design Engineer, and I am the government representative project manager for this project and for this NEPA process.
Great, thank you. And Jose, I see you're on. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, good afternoon. This is Jose Rosado. I'm the State Conservation Engineer and Watershed Program Manager for NRCS here in Nevada. My role really here is to support Mike in managing this project and support the sponsor and the project as well. So thank you guys.
Great, thank you. And I'm just going to look for those that I have on my list. Mary Pat, did you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Yes, Mary Pat Iman, and I am with the Washoe County Water Conservation District, and we are the sponsoring agency for the project.
Great, thank you. And I thought I saw Loretta. Loretta, are you on? Okay, anyone from Steamboat Canal and Irrigation District? Okay, I'll move to our project team. Ben, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, good evening. My name is Ben Volk and I'm the project manager for this project. So I will be kind of shepherding us through the next 2 years, and which will be the planning and environmental document, and look forward to working with all of you and hopefully have a project to design and move to construction in a couple of years. Thanks.
Great, thanks. Marty, let's go to you next.
Hi, I'm Marty Hodge. I will be leading the environmental process for this project, and I work with JUB engineers.
Great, thank you. And Shane, did you want to introduce yourself? I see he's unmuted, but maybe we'll move on until he connects. Let's go to Brian Byrne with JUB.
Hi, yeah, my name's Brian Byrne. I'm a project engineer for JUB, and I work on a lot of the on-call projects for the Steamboat Ditch.
Great. And Jeff, did you want to go next?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Jeff Weigel. I've helped out with Steamboat before on some engineering issues, and I'll be assisting with hydrology and hydraulics and project management for this project.
Great, thank you. Anyone on the project team or a project sponsor that I missed? Okay, well, I'm going to pull up our presentation then, and we're just going to dive straight in. So Ben, I'm going to hand it to you and just let me know when you would like me to advance the slides.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Welcome to everyone. And this is our kind of our kickoff public scoping meeting for the Truckee River Watershed Plan. And as I mentioned in my introduction, hopefully at the end of this process, we will come up with a watershed plan and an environmental document, which will be ready to then go to design. So this is our scoping meeting. What we really want to do here is listen, hear your comments, kind of hear your ideas on what projects we ought to consider. So before we get to that, let me tell you a little bit about the project and how we got to where we are today. So next slide, Elizabeth. So the Steamboat Canal and Irrigation Company is a very old company, very old canal. The canal was actually built in 1856 approximately. So we're well over 150 years old. Of course, the canal was there before much of anything else was here. Reno was a pretty small town back in the 1850s. And so it's grown a lot, and there's been a lot of urbanization that has occurred as part of that growth. Currently, the canal serves about 1,500 acres and about 500 landowners, and it goes through, I've got some maps and other things I'll show as I get into a little more detail here, but it's a 34-mile long canal, goes all the way from the state line, from the Nevada-California state line, all the way to Steamboat Creek off in South Reno. So some of the issues that we wanted to look at addressing was the canal gets a lot of stormwater that enters sometimes at not the best times of the year. And especially if the canal's already full with irrigation water, Stormwater entering the canal can add sediment, cause erosion, can potentially even cause the canal to breach and cause flooding and structure damage. We do see seepage from the canal that can result in water in basements and that type of thing. And then we also see the stormwater can affect the integrity of the canal. So this program, what we did is apply for a NRCS PL 566 grant, and it's through their Watershed Protection and Flood Prevention Program. And so the projects we want to identify will likely be along this canal, anywhere from the diversion to the tail end. And they will focus on a number of key aspects of this funding. And that is, flood protection. We definitely want to look at where can we work with the city and the county and public and private landowners to improve or reduce flood risk. Watershed protection. So if there's things we can do to protect the watershed from erosion and damage from flooding, even from some of these recent, like the Pine Haven fire, we may be able to make some watershed improvements there. We can also look at agriculture water management. So of course these canals are earthen and they seep quite a bit of water. Some of it goes into the ground, some of it gets taken up by plants, some of it ends up where we don't want it. So that's a part of it, is to more efficiently use the agricultural water. Public recreation is a part of this program. So if we can say improve the kayak passage over the dam or over the diversion structure, that would be one benefit we could look at. Public fish and wildlife is another part of this plan. And so if we can improve fish passage over the diversion, that would definitely be a benefit to the fish and wildlife. And municipal and industrial water supply. One of the board members of the Washoe County Water Conservation District is Tumwa, Truckee Meadows Water Authority, and they do deliver, or they have the ability to deliver some of their municipal and industrial water down the Steamboat Canal. Another part of the grant is water quality. So anything we can do within the watershed to improve water quality, whether that's sediment or chemicals or runoff from brakes and tires, if we get that out of the canal. And then the final one was kind of watershed structure rehabilitation. So if we've got aging stormwater facilities or aging canal structures, we can look at replacing those. So big shout out to the NRCS. This is fully funded by the NRCS through this project or through this process. And they will also, we can potentially apply, once we get through the planning process, apply for design and construction funding. So next slide. Okay, so I talked about some of our goals. Specifically, we believe we're going to focus on flood prevention and agricultural water management, but a lot of the subsequent outcomes of this project will have many implications, including public health and safety, potential recreation benefits like trails, and some of the other benefits I mentioned, like fish and wildlife. So the way this was submitted, the proposed solution was to replace the diversion on the Truckee River, which is right on the Nevada-California line, replace about 15 miles of canal. And the initial thought was just to start piping right at the diversion and pipe all the way into Reno. We've since kind of thought, well, maybe it would be better to leave that rural canal system open for now and focus more on piping the urban areas. So that's kind of one idea, is to not worry about the existing canal, because if and when it breaks or has issues, it's not as detrimental or costly as when it breaks in urban areas. We want to replace what we call headgate structures, which is basically the meter going to the properties, potentially add some metering so we can track, see how much water we're using. Right now, those structures aren't highly accurate, so this would allow us to put on more accurate monitoring, and potentially even have remote access to those measurements. So either a fiber optic system or some kind of telecommunication wireless system. We want to look at installing stormwater detention measures and regulating stormwater flows. And most likely, especially if we end up piping through the urban areas, there will be some locations where we'll keep the canal open for stormwater handling. So you may not see the irrigation water in it anymore, but it will still be available, and we'll work with the city and county to improve the canal and make it usable for stormwater events. And just some of the benefits, I kind of talked about these already, but water quality, if we can improve water quality coming back to the Truckee River through like Hunter Creek, Alum Creek, Steamboat Creek, that's definitely benefit for the watershed. If we can conserve some water, that water gets handled by the Truckee River Operating Agreement by the federal water master. And so that water could have some other benefits. And then we can improve public safety by just reducing the flooding risks and the potential for a canal breach. So next slide, please. So this is kind of a snapshot of what the canal looks like right now. You can see on the left side of the photo is the California-Nevada border. The canal is diverted from the river, and you wouldn't really call it a dam. We call it a diversion structure. It's about maybe 6 feet high, very low pressure, low head. Doesn't really retain any water. It's just enough of a structure in the river to push the water into the canal. Then the canal flows north and east all the way into the kind of Reno city limits. About around Hunter Creek, the canal goes south, southeast, and flows all the way down through South Reno, West Reno, Southwest, eventually gets its way all the way down, crosses under the Mount Rose Highway, crosses under Highway 580, and ultimately dumps back to Steamboat Creek at Old 395. So down south of Reno, just north of Washoe Lake. So what we're looking for today is any ideas you may have for where we should determine the projects will be, and what the scope of those projects will be. And then what we'll do once we've gathered all the information we'll need, we'll come up with a list of alternatives, and then we'll focus on a preferred alternative. And then Marty and her team will go through the permitting process. And at the end of this 2-year period, so October of 2022, ideally we'll have a environmental planning document ready to go, and we'll be going back to Nrcs for design to proceed with full design. So that's it on the project, unless there's any, I think we're doing questions at the end. So I will turn it back to you, Elizabeth.
Great, thank you. Marty, anything that you would like to add with regard to our environmental assessment process and this anticipated timeline?
Sure. So because this project is being funded by the federal government, a set of environmental regulations have to be followed before the project can move into design and then into construction. So this display right here outlines the primary stages of the environmental process. Right now, we're in the beginning phase. This is our scoping phase, where we're reaching out to project stakeholders to get information, hear concerns, let everybody know the process is starting. And then after the 30-day public comment period for the scoping process, we'll take all of those comments, work those into a report, and then start with our alternative development. And once that alternative development is complete, we'll take our proposed alternatives and then evaluate resource impacts for each of those alternatives. And as Ben said, it's a long process. It takes about 18 to 24 months to move through each of these steps. And then we're hoping at about the 18-month mark, we'll have a draft environmental document that'll be available, that'll have all of the resource reports, the information about what the proposed alternative is, the information that we gained during the scoping report. That would all be combined into one environmental document that we will then send out to the public, and we'll have another open house so we can answer questions, talk to everybody about what's progressed over the past 18 months. And then after that, there'll be another 30-day public comment period, at which point we will respond to comments, see if there's any final concerns. And then NRCS will issue a decision document as to whether or not the project can move forward with design. So it's a lot of information to throw out all at once. And if you have any questions, just let us know during this meeting. There'll also be information available about the NEPA process up on our project website, and you can reach out to Elizabeth and she'll give you some more information about that. Thanks.
Correct. So in a moment, we are going to look at some pictures of the dam itself, the diversion dam, and then we'll move into questions. So now is a great time to start putting those questions in the chat function. Remember, you'll want to send those to Allison. She is compiling those, and she will start to pull them into our conversation. While you submit your initial questions, something we want to remind you is that, as Marty mentioned, we do have a formal commenting period. And so that begins today, December 8th, and that will go until January 15th. And so if you would, after this evening, like to submit a formal comment that either addresses issues of concern, ideas that you'd like the project team to consider, or even supportive comments because you're enthusiastic about the project and you want to show your support for it, whatever that may be, you can send them to me through these 3 different channels. So you can send it through hard mail at this address on the screen. You can call me at this phone number and submit it through the phone, or you can also email truckeeriver@nevadawatershed.com. There's also a website, you'll notice here, truckeeriver.nbwatershed.com. That is the project website. So you can visit that website. This recording will be on that website. This display information will be on there. We'll update that website as the project progresses, but this contact information will be on that website so you can reach us. In order for it to be considered a formal comment, do make sure you get that submitted by January 15th. A few folks have already reached out with questions. That's fine. If you don't want to submit a formal comment, but you still have some additional project questions, feel free to give me a call or send us an email. We'll be happy to work with you. Okay, I am now going to very quickly pull up some photos that we have of the actual project site, and then I will hand it over to Allison to bring in our initial questions. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Great. So Ben or Jeff, do you kind of want to walk us through? I've got 4 slides if you want to just kind of point out what you're looking at.
So yeah, Elizabeth, this is what I call the diversion structure, the diversion dam. So this would be right at the California-Nevada line. You're basically looking upriver, so you're looking west toward California. That diversion structure basically pushes the water to the south bank or the left bank into the Steamboat Canal. And you can see now the current condition of the dam. I'm not a kayaker. I'm a runner and mountain biker, but I think if I was a kayaker, I don't know if I'd want to drop over that dam. So that's one of the concerns we've heard is the dam safe for recreation. And then the other concern there would be is it fish friendly? Does it allow fish to move up the river and down the river without any getting stuck behind that diversion structure? That's another little closer picture of the diversion. This would be to the left or the south bank, and those are the diversion gates that currently divert water into the canal. And as you can see, those are all manual. So a ditch rider walks out there and cranks on those wheels and opens the amount of water that's delivered to the ditch. That's governed by the federal water master, and that is, he adjusts that daily or weekly depending on the demands in the district and how much water is available. And then the next photo is looking downstream. So that's right downstream of the diversion. And this is pretty typical of the canal for the next 34 miles is there's some earthen, there's parts of it that have been piped, but there's quite a bit of it that's just earthen canal. These canals were dug by Chinese laborers back in the 1850s. And so the bottom is just earthen, the sides are earthen, and the canals run at a real steady grade, about 0.5%. If you've ever hiked or walked on a canal road, they're a pretty pleasant hike because you really don't have to go up and down very much. However, they do follow the hillside. So in general, they kind of follow the contours of the ground and go along at the same elevation or slightly dropping as they go. The only couple of notable exceptions to that is you probably all have heard of the hole in the wall. And that's where instead of going around the mountain, they tunneled through the mountain and put a tunnel through, which is now a pipeline. So you'll see that in a few places. And then I believe there's some flumes in a couple places too, where the water flows over the creek or whatever they're crossing through a concrete or wooden flume. So that's it for the photos. I think we can take some questions.
Great. Okay, so I have one question so far, and then we'll go to what Allison has in her queue. Can you comment on the notion that I have from your email that the cost of the project is to fall under 25 million in order to keep the scoping to an EA versus an EIS?
Yes, under this PL 566 program, we will do an environmental document, and as long as we can keep the total project cost under 25 million, that project can be they will fall under an environmental assessment. If for some reason we grow to over 25 million, then we have to go to a full environmental impact statement. And I don't know if Mike or anyone else wants to add anything to that, but.
Mike or Marty, anything to add?
Yeah, the other thing that could potentially move this into an environmental impact statement would be if there were any resource impacts that were significant or of such great concern that we couldn't mitigate those. And so that would be up to the folks at NRCS to make that decision. As we stand today at the very kickoff, we're just kicking off the project. We're hoping that the environmental documentation will be commensurate with an environmental assessment, but we'll work through that as we develop alternatives and look at resource impacts.
Great, thank you. Mike, anything you'd like to add?
No, I think that addressed it pretty well.
Okay, great. Okay, other questions? Allison, anything on your side?
I haven't got any questions in the chat. If you've got a question, just send me a quick message and I'll read it out.
Or this could be a pretty quick meeting. So while we are waiting for additional questions, I'm going to throw up that contact information again. Ben, go ahead if you wanted to jump in with something.
Yeah, and what we're looking for is, what are your ideas for the project? So if we piped, if we decide, okay, we're going to pipe from Hunter Creek to, say, McCarren, or maybe a few miles past McCarren, what are your concerns there? We've held a agency scoping meeting last Thursday, and of course the city and the county are both very concerned about stormwater, and we want to make sure we work very closely with city, county, and state, federal, and local agencies to make sure we address those flooding concerns. But as I said, there's some potential outcomes that could come from this project that they may not be flood related, they may not be ag water management related, but they may be, we may be able to come up with some trails, and those trails they could be everything from like they are now. They're not official trails. They're just, they happen to be there. There will be most likely a gravel road over the pipeline for maintenance purposes. So just any ideas like that on things you would like to see improved within the watershed, or areas of concern that you have.
Okay, so we have a few questions coming in. I'm going to group them a little bit because I think they're somewhat related. So the first question grouping: who will be reviewing design for fish passage and recreation safety? And along with that, what kind of mitigation is available? So is that a Ben or a Marty question?
I can take a first shot at it, and then Mike may want to weigh in. So as far as design review for fish passage, we'll be working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to make sure that we're meeting all requirements. And then as far as design review, the Nrcs folks will review that. And I believe we'll also be working with other federal agencies on design review. Mike, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so in the NEPA process, the draft plan will be sent to all appropriate agencies that we'll be having to pull permits from. So at that point, that won't be the design being reviewed particularly, that'll be the plan, which will draft out what is going to be designed. But at that point, it will get sent to the appropriate agencies. So like you were talking about, U.S. Fish and Wildlife will have an opportunity to take a look at that at that time and give their input. And then once we get into the design process, there is Nrcs standards that need to be met. We also will be sending this to our National Water Management Center, which is part of the Nrcs that will be sending the plan for essentially ultimate approval to, and they'll be the ones that approve if this moves further along into the design and construction phases, well, them and national programs. So there'll be multiple stages where there'll be elements of design review from different specialists. And then we also have our in-house biologists, archaeologists, and other topic specialists reviewing the documents as they're being drafted and created as well.
Great, thank you. And tied to that question is another one that asks, is the USDA funding for this project something that would also support recreational infrastructure expansion? Would that be probably a Ben or a Mike?
And that would be yes. It does. It is part of the program, and they will fund recreational improvements. It's not as flood improvements are almost 100% funded, 100% grant. I think recreation is 25 to 50%. So we'd have to come up with a match. But that's part of the reason we're reaching out to not only the public and all the stakeholders we can talk to, is, and also the agencies that we've involved, is can we leverage this funding with other local, state, and federal funding to build a better project, to get a better, the best alternative that we can come up with. So that's kind of our ulterior motive there, is to involve as many stakeholders as possible and find out what it is you'd like to see for this project.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
this is Mike.
oh, go ahead.
I'd like to add to that recreation can be a portion of the project, but it's not, this program can't necessarily fund like just recreation infrastructure. There's other program limitations, like a certain portion of the overall project has to have agricultural benefits because it's a USDA program. So like if someone applied for this program and they're like, we just want to build trails, that wouldn't necessarily go through this project, but there is the potential, like Ben was saying, to get some partial funding to attach some recreational elements to a larger project.
Okay. So while we're on the topic of trails, we've gotten a couple of questions pertaining to property owners that have property near that proposed trail. So how will property owners be informed and are included in the project conception?
I think we've probably kind of already started that, Elizabeth, but we're definitely letting anyone along the canal corridor within that, at least that first house or two adjacent to the canal, they will be kept informed. And then, of course, as we work with the city, if we make improvements further away from the canal, or if we determine an alternative that's either uphill or downhill from the canal, we'll bring in those stakeholders. And one thing to keep in mind right now, these canal easements are they're owned by the Steamboat, or they're Steamboat Canal and Irrigation Company easements, but they are on private property. So the canal company just has an easement to own and operate a canal. So that will definitely be part of the discussion, is, do homeowners want people walking along the canal? Is that a desired thing, or is that something they don't want? So we will definitely be sensitive to that, and we'll have to, work through the issues if we did come up with a trail. Who does it belong to? Who's responsible for it? Who maintains it? Those kind of issues. Basically, anytime you build a canal, somebody's got to be in charge of keeping it in shape and walkable or bikeable or whatever type of trail it is. So.
Okay. The next question is, during the construction, will there be impacts to the delivery of the water to shareholders?
I would say we will do our best to not do work during the irrigation season. I can't say for certain that we won't. There could be, depending on the size of the project, maybe we may try to shut off early one year to try to get a project construction, or if we have a mild winter, maybe we'd start a little bit later. But I think in general, the plan would be to not disrupt service, or to disrupt service as little as possible during the construction process.
Okay. Allison, do you have questions coming through to you?
I don't have any.
Then I will keep moving through mine. Can you describe the benefit of piping through the Caughlin Ranch area?
Yeah, the Caughlin Ranch has seen a lot of flooding issues and seepage. Jeff Weigel and Brian Byrne have both seen, get calls from homeowners with water in their basement or seepage from a canal. So that's one of the areas we definitely want to look at and try to get a handle on the stormwater flows, what impacts those are having, how can we mitigate those impacts, and how do we make that part of the preferred alternative. But Caughlin Ranch will definitely be I think one of the areas we think affected part of that area. So this may be a way to mitigate some of those impacts from fire above the canal.
I can elaborate a little bit on that too. Piping through the Caughlin Ranch area will pretty directly mitigate a lot of the flooding issues, or has potential to mitigate a lot of those flooding issues. So instead of having an open canal that may flood if there's too much water in, one option is to move the flooding areas to natural drainages or areas that can be better controlled. And then there's a much reduced risk of flooding through the areas that it is piped. There's a similar risk reduction with seepage issues. A pipe is much less likely to seep as an earthen canal. And so areas that would see piping would likely see a much lower risk of flooding and seepage.
Okay. Another question we have, will flow modeling be HECRAS or 2D of the new structure? Who wants to take that one? Ben?
Jeff, you want to take that one?
I
Sure.
think this is Shane. I think they're referring to the modeling of this diversion structure at the inlet, would be my guess here. And we would be doing that in 2D if that's what we're referring to.
It is.
For the design.
It sounds like that is.
Yeah, for the design of the diversion, that'll be in 2D. Again, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves because right now we're really looking for the alternatives. We're going through the alternatives analysis to decide what is the best alternative, so that we can put forward that preferred alternative and get it approved environmentally.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think I would add to that, Elizabeth. We're at this point we're gathering facts. We're the more the public and the stakeholders can let us know what the issues are, whether it's if you know of a particular issue where there's been flooding, or if you know of a particular area where there's a significant cultural artifact or structure, we want to know. We'll probably find out about that through our additional studies. But there's, like, up at the diversion structure, there's an old dam tender house that's built out of stone that I would say is well over 100 years old. And so that type of thing we'll try to protect and make sure we don't have any impacts to that structure.
Okay. We have another trail question. Before we go there, Allison, I want to check with you. Any questions that you're receiving? Okay. This next question says, many homeowners and citizens enjoy the trails, as you know, for walking, running, and cycling. And during the former cleaning stage of the ditch, it would pose some conflict to those activities and dangers. Are there plans to perhaps separate those paths or trails to allow both to better work together?
Yes, I think so, because, well, as Jeff was explaining, one of the benefits of piping, say we pipe through Caughlin Ranch, is you no longer have you most likely will no longer have a canal to maintain if the irrigation water's in a pipe. And if you do have a stormwater canal to maintain, it'll only be a seasonal type maintenance. So I think there still will be times where the ditch rider will post signs and say, keep out, we're replacing a valve, or we're doing some work here on the stormwater canal. And people need to be aware of that. These are, when we're making repairs along the canal, it's a dangerous, you've got heavy equipment operating, you've got workers moving around, you've got unstable soil. So we love our canals. Like I said, I'm a runner and mountain biker. I love my canals, but when I see public works people out there trying to do their job, I listen to them. If they say, yeah, you can run through, go ahead. It's no problem. We're on our lunch break. I might run through, but if I see equipment moving, it's, it says keep out, go around, find a different route. I know maybe you run there every day for the last 10 years, but there's going to be a couple days where you won't be able to run. And I think the same thing during construction, there's going to be times where we've just got to block the canal off and say, please stay out. This isn't a safe place to run right now, but you're welcome back, in a few months when we're done. So hopefully that answers the question.
One last question that I have in my queue. Is there a leader in the preferred alternative for the change to the dam?
I would echo what Shane said. Right now we really have no preferred alternative. We have no, we've wiped the slate clean. So even though what we submitted to get the funding was to replace or improve the diversion and pipe part of the canal, that may not ultimately be the alternative we select. So right now, out of all those 6 or 7 different classifications, we're looking for ideas. Where's the preferred area? What do we want to do? It may not be piping the canal. Some areas maybe we just line the canal with concrete. We don't necessarily put it in a pipeline, or we change the route of the canal. If there's an area that's a very high hazard, we may acquire property and go around that area to try to avoid it. If it's a active seismic area or an area that's seen substantial flooding that we don't think we can address through design, we may bypass that area or make some other plans. So nope, the idea right now is a blank slate. We want to hear everyone's ideas.
Okay. Any other questions? Feel free to submit them through the chat. We have a few more minutes if anyone has an additional question.
I could maybe add
Okay.
to the response.
Go ahead, Jeff.
About the conflict of the various trail users. I think there is an opportunity to improve or reduce the number of conflicts that occur for the necessary maintenance that Ben described, and the many trail users that enjoy that access road and trail. If you do have a specific idea about how that might be improved as a trail user or as somebody who uses that for some use that we don't know about, I would encourage you to make a comment, a formal comment, and give us some ideas. We'd really appreciate hearing that.
Yep. So I am going to, for just one more time, share with you that contact information. So again, this is how you can submit those formal comments. So if you have additional issues or questions or ideas that you want the project team to take into consideration, please feel free to submit those by January 15th. This phone number and email address will continue to be open to you with additional questions throughout the project. So even if it's just a question that's beyond that commenting period, feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to talk you through where we're at with the project. And particularly if you have any questions or concerns around those trails, we would be happy to chat with you. Project team, anything else you want to add before we adjourn?
I think the other thing we could offer too, Elizabeth, is if you have a group, homeowners association or someone like that that wants to learn more, let us know and we can set up a Zoom or a Teams meeting to kind of get some more one-on-one feedback from you. We'd love to get, the more feedback we can get, the better. The better we can make this project, and potentially bring in additional funding sources that we haven't even thought about yet. So just let Elizabeth know if you want to have a breakout session, or if you're shy and you just want to have a one-on-one chat, let us know. We'd love to talk. That's what the Langdon group does, is facilitate public discussion. And so that's what we're here for.
Absolutely. Anything else from the project team before we wrap?
I would just like to thank the public for coming to the meeting today and providing your comments. We look forward to seeing any additional comments and working with everyone throughout the process.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you everyone. Have a great evening. Reminder, this will be posted on that website soon, so feel free to go back and watch it all over again or share with your friends, and we look forward to hearing from you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.